Have you ever had one of those days where your brain feels like it has missed the memo? You're tired, wired, overstimulated, and undermotivated. We'd call that a prime example of being dysregulated. Welcome to the show where neuroscience meets real life. I'm your host, Josh, and alongside me are Jeff and Vince. Together, we're going to unpack some of the most advanced hardware in the known universe, our brains. Most of us never got a user manual or a demonstration or a test drive. We've just had to figure it out on the fly. So in this podcast, we're going to open it up. Not literally, but we're going to talk about assessing brain function and revealing the intimate details of how brain health relates to mental health. This is about reshaping how we think about and do mental health, from assessment to treatment planning to a new expectation for actual and lasting outcomes. Let's explore options for growth, healing, and find the kind of life you want to enjoy. Welcome to Dysregulated. Let's make sense of some of this mess. So as I said on that intro, my name's Josh. I am thrilled to have with me here Jeff, our owner and executive director, and one of our many very talented clinicians, Mr. Vince. We're here. This is our pilot. We just want to introduce ourselves a little bit, introduce a little bit about what we're talking about on this podcast and what we're all about here. So to get to the heart of that, I want to start with Jeff. So Jeff, again, being owner and executive director, you've been in this position for how long?
Oh, I've been doing this for almost 14, 15 years at this point.
Wow. So tell me a little bit about how you got here. What roads, we're going to be talking about two different roads that kind of converge to get us to this point where we're doing this podcast. So Jeff, tell me a little bit about your road to get here.
Yeah, my road was windy, twisted, and headed towards a destination that I never envisioned. I always tell folks when it comes to neurofeedback, neuroanalysis, I came into this field kicking and screaming. I literally had no intention of doing this. My first career, I served for over 15 years as a pastor, a guy in ministry, sensed a call to kind of shift things around, decided to get a degree in marriage and family therapy, and went to school at Fairfield University. And while I was there, ended up meeting a guy that was doing neurofeedback. You know, he's one of my classmates, really good guy. He actually practices here in Connecticut as well. And when I graduated, he invited me to come in and work out of his office. And here he is. He's showing me all this different stuff. He's telling me how wonderful it is. As far as I can tell, it's like some kid watching TV with a stupid looking cap on his head and like a dimmer screen. He's telling me that he's like, you know, treating ADHD and these kids are getting better and coming off of meds. And I mean, honestly, I'm like, no way, you know, like it's, you know, if I'm going to believe that, I may as well go ahead and buy that bridge from Brooklyn that's for sale. I just thought it was ridiculous. But as I was in that office and I began to see more about the efficacy, the outcomes, that's the point at which I realized, holy cow, there's something about this that is really working. And it started to make me really think, what is this all about?
Yep. Shout out if you're in Connecticut, come say hi to us.
Hey,
we're in Sandy Hook, right next to Newtown High School. Come say hi.
Yep.
So on the other road, we've got Vince, and I understand you've got a career change as well. Tell me a little bit about how, again, you got here.
Yeah, so I think my story actually begins based on my own dysregulation, to play off the name of the podcast. I had a career over a decade long in personal training and fitness, and also competitive Muay Thai kickboxing. You could say that was rooted in my own insecurities and things like that. But in working with people, what I realized was that you needed to build emotional and mental strength to see results in terms of physical fitness, in terms of competition. And so I realized the real work to be done was more in the field of mental health. I realized that's where sustainability in any form of results really lied. So, I rerouted, took a step away from what was a successful career in fitness, and have now been able to merge it with my work as an LPC. I think it's a phenomenal opportunity to bridge the gap between physical and mental wellness.
Mm-hmm. I know if you're not watching us live, I'm currently looking at one of your punching bags that you have here. walk me through the thought process with some of your clients, right? You train here in the office with some of your clients.
Absolutely. So I like to incorporate martial arts because it's very interactive. And so I work with a lot of young clients here at the Neurovation Center, in complement to the neurofeedback that they receive. And a lot of times we have young people that have a hard time expressing themselves verbally. Movement is very, very important to our species, right? Movement's very important to our brain. And so getting people moving with you is an opportunity to interact in such a positive way and to build such important foundational elements of one's self-regard, so I've seen it be extremely helpful for a broad spectrum of issues that people face. But yep, we do pad work, very interactive drills, and I try and show them that there is a lot that they can explore in terms of movement.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's cool. Well, so hopefully we'll get to meet some of our other clinicians, but that's one of the things I love about this center is that you have some of the most uniquely gifted and talented people. I think Vince is one of the funniest people I know for sure. And I mean, they're going to be a wellspring of wisdom for us moving forward. So like I said, we want to dive a little bit in this episode about what we're here for. Why are we here? What are we talking about? What the heck does dysregulated mean? Keep a lookout. This is actually going to be a 4-part kind of mini series to kick us off. We're going to be discussing a few different things, such as, just an intro. Hey, this is who we are. All the way to, what does it mean to be dysregulated? We're going to talk about that a little bit. We're going to talk about why mental health feels so broken a lot of times. And then we're going to talk about neurofeedback. And, although that's not going to be the specific focus of our podcast, it's going to be the expertise that we look through. It's the lens that we look through into whatever it is that, listeners at home want to hear about, whatever topics we feel like are important for people to know, being in the mental health world. That's just a little bit of our background. So, So Jeff, you said something really good before we went on air here. Break down for us why, in us talking, how did you get to the point of saying, yeah, let's pull the trigger. Let's do a podcast.
Yeah, I wanted to do a podcast because nobody knows what we do. Mm-hmm. And once they find out what we do, they all want to do it. And that's not a joke. I was saying, this morning I went and of course I had to get coiffed, I got a haircut this morning, wanted to look really good for the podcast. And so I'm sitting there and my stylist is, just kind of chatting, making banter. And I'm looking at her going, please do a nice job. I got a podcast. She's like, oh, you've got a podcast. What are you going to be doing? And I started to explain what it was. And she's literally looking at me going, that's a thing? And so now all of a sudden she starts talking to me about her anxiety and her focus issues and the fact that she's been involved with seeing therapists for years and that she's been on meds and she doesn't want to be and they're not working. And she's like, really, there's something else. It's an option. And that's what I wanted to get at. I feel like we need to do a podcast like this because there are so many options that are out there now that are beyond the normal and the traditional. Right now, there's only 2 things that we end up doing when it comes to mental health treatment. Frankly, we have 2 options. One is we're going to medicate, or the other one is we're going to do talk-based therapy, right? And one of the things you're going to hear us say over and over on this is we're not anti either of those. I'm pro, right? I'm totally into absolutely doing therapy. I'm a therapist. Vince is a therapist. All of the clinicians on our staff are licensed mental health professionals. And so this is integrated into what we do. All the talk-based therapy is good. But most people have kind of come to the conclusion that, hey, a lot of times the talk-based counseling works, but it doesn't do the whole job. And then on the other side of this, we've got folks that are coming in that are medicated. And again, I'm not anti-med. I would call myself a med minimalist, right? I'm kind of like, I know that they're necessary in a lot of cases, but at this point in our culture, they just kind of seem to be a catch-all. If we don't know how else to fix it, throw a med at it. And a lot of people don't want that. They don't like that approach. They're tired of that approach. And so there's this inherent sense that people are getting that there's something missing. And that's what we're going to be looking at. We're going to be looking at the missing link throughout this entire program. Almost like the theme of this is going to be, hey, we want to take the good stuff that works and we want to integrate it with new technologies, new modalities, things that can actually make all the difference in the world when you pull it all together. That's kind of the approach that we wanted, you know.
One might call that a paradigm shift.
Yeah, absolutely.
Shift towards resolution.
Mm-hmm. And Vince, you've got a good story. I know I don't want to spoil anything, so keep it very brief. But you had an experience that kind of brought you into the mental health field, right? Was it an inpatient center?
Yes. So actually, when I first stepped into mental health as a path alternative to fitness, I landed in a residential treatment center for adolescents. So a population, near and dear to everyone's hearts. They're still children, right? They're still learning about the world and they're running into issues. Now, whether that's family-based or whether it's event-based or, a combination of both, genetics, environment, it's a setting where you learn a lot about yourself in the work that you do, right? I started out as direct care staff. So, being with a group of really troubled young people for, 8 to 12 hours straight through highs and lows. I found I fell in love with crisis because that's when people needed the most help, right? And eventually I was blessed enough to create an opportunity where I started to blend clinical work in the form of therapy with movement-based experiential things such as martial arts, fitness, and even outdoor adventure-based activities like rock climbing, river scrambling, and things like that. So that setting to me is one in which we have a 90-day cap. So it's 90 days, get done what you can. Hope that you help a person as much as you can and then send them back to that world that led to them coming to you in the first place. And so without getting too far into it, I think that to me, what became apparent was that there needs to be a shift here. There needs to be a shift towards resolution. There needs to be a shift towards results so that people can live optimally. And, a lot of that led me to Jeff. Led me to neurofeedback.
And that's a big part of the paradigm shift. I mean, when people ask me, what is it that's different about what you do? We think very differently about mental health. The goal of a lot of what we're looking at, and these are things that we're going to get into in the next couple of sessions to really flesh this stuff out. We're not really focused on diagnostic categories anymore. Those don't mean that much, frankly. As we get into this more, I think this is in maybe episode 3, we'll talk a little bit more with the problem with diagnostic categories. But what we're finding is that rather than looking at diagnoses and fitting people into boxes, what we need to be doing is figuring out where are these sources actually coming from. And that's where this comes in. That's where the work that we're doing right now is actually working with the brain, assessing brain function, right? Speaking brain, working with the languaging of the brain. We'll do a lot more of this in our next episode, but we're actually able to see biomarkers that we can associate with the symptoms of mental health issues. And it's a whole different way of thinking about it. So not only do we want to assess differently, we've also got new modalities, new technology, technologies that people hadn't been aware of, where we can help to retrain the brain so that as the brain gets healthier, your mental state, your mental wellness improves. So those are really different. And a lot of what we love to do with this is, as we talk about this with people that come into us, bring into their lives a sense of hope that all of these folks that are coming in don't have to just come in and think that they're always going to have a mental illness. It's a permanent condition. They're going to die with it. No, actually, we have an opportunity to really eradicate a lot of this stuff. I mean, I love what you said before about, you found yourself, Vince, with a lot of people in crisis, right? And that's one of those things that I really like about you is that you bring to your therapy and just in the way you interact with these folks, this sense of hope and calming. I mean, I would tell you that at least 5%, maybe 10% of the folks that come to our office, and I don't know if you've noticed this. I mean, we talk about the significance of the cases that come to us. We get the people that come in and say, I've tried everything else. I've tried the meds. It hasn't worked. I've tried the therapy. I'm still stuck. I can't find my life. I can't get engaged. I can't find motivation. I feel like every day I'm just clawing to get out of it. And they're like, if this doesn't work, I don't know what I'm going to do, which frankly, it's like a thinly veiled kind of threat at that point in time. And you realize, oh my gosh, we need this paradigm shift because we need to help people to get hope. And that's really a lot about it. Absolutely. Which is the reason why we want to get this out there. I'm thinking of this as just kind of like, hey, one of our initial consults. Yeah. Jumping in there, helping you to find out what it is that we do, so that you can start to make good decisions for yourself and actually have hope that there are some new awesome options that are out there.
Yeah. And just to be clear, right? What, is there any, science behind this? Because there's a lot of things out there nowadays that sometimes seem too good to be true. When we say that, something that our data suggests just in our office as we track symptoms, our goal is a 50% reduction in symptoms. That's, in the vast majority of cases, diagnosable to non-diagnosable.
Correct.
Just like that line of you are diagnosed with ADHD and now it's just gone. What happened? Right? Like, tell me a little bit about what does the data suggest? I know you've done a lot of research. You've got some good books. If anybody at home has any questions, we'll dive more into this. But always feel free to shoot us an email, message us on Facebook, do whatever. We'd love to send you just the things that we have, the resources we have on neurofeedback, and all sorts of different modalities. But can you just talk a little bit to that extent?
Yeah. And I get that an awful lot because I will get a lot of folks that come in skeptical. And I love it when people come in skeptical because that tells me that these are thoughtful people, right? So sometimes people do just want to jump at anything. And I think it is one of the hazards of the industry that we're in is that there are forms of kind of like brain-based technology that really aren't particularly helpful, that really aren't particularly professional grade. So we want to help people to understand that you want to look for the professional grades. You want to look for the stuff that is, really clearly proven to be true. We're going to take a look at a couple of different things, I think, over the next few sessions. We're going to start looking at the EEG basis of where symptoms emerge from in the next one. When we talk about neurofeedback and the basic principles of it, we're going to have some fun with it. And at the same point, I'm going to talk about the elegant solution of neurofeedback, of how non-invasively and painlessly, other than like having to deal with my jokes, you can actually see significant shift in your symptoms simply by teaching your brain how to adapt its own rhythms. It's deeply rooted in neuroscience. So there's a lot of different things that people can do to kind of follow up on the science behind this. Again, listen to the podcast. We'll try to pull in some of these things for folks. If we have questions that come in, we'll try to answer it. But increasingly, and I'm just going to mention this, when you look at a lot of the neuromodulation techniques, and that means helping the brain to change its own rhythm, helping it to moderate and modulate electrical currents differently. When you apply this, almost every time you do research on it, and this is, again, whether it's a double-blind study, all kinds of different case studies, meta-analyses of, a number of different studies, almost invariably, you get significant improvement in reduction, whether you're dealing with ADHD, which we're going to talk about how that doesn't exist. The symptoms exist, but ADHD as a diagnosis does not correlate as an appropriate description for a mental health condition. It doesn't exist. And the same thing with generalized anxiety disorder. It doesn't exist. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. Anxiety exists, stress exists, but not in the way that we conceptualize it as a diagnostic category. But that's all coming out of science. This is all coming out of our understanding of how the brain functions and the research that's going on. All of this research comes back showing almost invariably improvements. These are improvements that last, and they're improvements that change lives. And that's really what it comes down to. That's, our goal, our job is ultimately about people, about changing lives, about getting them unstuck. I love to say my job is, it has to do with unstuckification. I make up words. We like doing that. It's a little bit more fun that way. Queegish.
I apologize.
We'll get there. Yeah, it's good.
Some of them are cheesy. But
we have fun with it.
They're going to learn some Queegish along the way, And I think what we're talking about here, this, the podcast hopefully is a phenomenal learning opportunity. I feel like I learn every time I have a conversation with either of these two guys here. So I hope that there's, information for you guys that's helpful, but it also speaks to the learning nature of the brain. right? Our brain learns its way into some of the things we struggle with. And down the road, we're going to talk about compensatory, learning and how our brain learns the ways that it feels it can keep us safe. And
it's like a dysfunctional functionality is what we look at.
Yeah, because these things happen across the lifespan. And so, our brain is going to make profound adjustments along the way and attempt to learn and keep us well and safe. And in a way, when you look back on your experiences with that beginning lens, you can have a respect for some of the things you've been through,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So what I want to transition us to is a little bit, we're going to, spoiler alert, we're going to want to tell some stories. This isn't necessarily a story. This is like a pretend this is a story type thing. I want to ask about if you are a client at the Neurovation Center, right? You call in, you talk to our wonderful receptionist, Amy, and she says, yeah, I'll get you in for an initial consult. Vince, I want to ask you, because you work a lot with initial consults and initial, assessment work. What, from the client perspective, does it look like to come to the Neurovation Center and like just because I want to get to the back end a little bit to just give you a sneak peek of what we do.
Yeah.
Jeff, I'm going to come to you for that. But first, like from a client side, what does it look like when they just come into our office?
Well, first of all, I mean, the setting has a lot to do with the vibe and the sense of calm that we try and create here. So, when you come in, you see a waiting room that's full of trees. It's very custom, right? It's a very, very calming space in and of itself. Initial consults begin really with an exploration of the client's lived experience, right? This is about individuals. So it's not that we're leading various people in here to try and squeeze them into a one size fits all. So we always begin by exploring the lived experiences, the precipitating factors, the reasons that brought somebody here. And that is honestly a large chunk of the beginning of an initial consult. It's getting to understand the person, or as best as one can, and then putting information out there in a way where they can make the best decision for themselves, right? A lot of times I do tap into my past in fitness because I think it's an easy way to explain what we do and not overwhelm people. We tend to say that people do neurofeedback training, right? So, training, we're training the brain. And so I oftentimes correlate this to exercise programming. People have a very, very easy time gripping it when I say, you would work out 3 to 4 times a week to get good fitness results, right? And you would need the right workout program for you as an individual, right? The workout program that might work for me might not work for Jeff or Josh. And so we really get into that based on what they brought to the table. And then, of course, it involves showing them around and allowing them to feel comfortable in the space in which the training actually occurs, which is a really phenomenal space. I know that nobody can see it, but I can describe it. There's a panoptic desk. We have clinical support the entire time, and we have multiple rooms running, each attended by techs. It's pretty phenomenal to see in action.
Yeah. So, right. So we're very client-centric.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff, you've said 12, 15 years now that you've been doing this. You've developed a very different system for intake and assessment, right? A big motto that we live by here is that there's no, there are no two individuals that are the exact same.
That's right.
Everybody is unique. Every brain is unique, right? So when when I'm talking about the back end and from a, professional sense, first of all, how did you come to realize that there needs to be a little bit of a change to how you wanted to do intake work from a traditional therapy office? And then, or maybe not even therapy office, but just like neurofeedback, mental health care office. It's applicable in a lot of different ways. Yeah. But then what does that look like on the back end now?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of what led me to develop this kind of a really uniquely person-centered, highly individualized, personalized intake system was the conviction that diagnostic categories weren't working. I mean, I knew this even before I started to understand things like biomarkers and how the brain dysregulates, stuff we're all going to get into. It's going to be really cool stuff. But I began realizing that these diagnostic categories weren't really worth a whole lot. And everybody knows it. I mean, it's kind of like it's the emperor's new clothes of the mental health world, right? We all walk around saying, oh, he has this, and everybody knows it doesn't make any sense. And we just don't have anything to replace it with. And so now I'm starting to think, well, what else did we replace it with? And the more I learned about brain science, the more I learned about dysregulation, the more I began to realize that what's much more important is understanding things like the origin of where these symptoms are coming from. So we're much more concerned, like, you were saying, Vince, we're more concerned with finding out what's the context of this person's life. Where are these symptoms coming from? How much of this is related to brain function and health overall and the trauma that people have experienced and how that's affected their brains, their central nervous systems, how it's affected their lives in a whole different level. So that's really one of the first places that we want to go. Is we want to make sure that we listen to our clients. I would even go deeper into this, and I just want, I want people to understand that when I started this business, when I started the Neurovation Center, and I got into this, I do this because I believe deeply, not just in like individualized stuff. I believe deeply in the significance, the value, and the purposefulness of every single person's life. Right. I believe deeply, right? I'm a God-fearing man. I believe in a God. I believe in a personal God. I believe that every single person that walks into my office, every person I meet, everybody, right? They're all created in the image of a God who loves them, who has a purpose for their lives. And I got to tell you, when I see somebody who's struggling to find their purpose or their meaning, I don't know how I can say I love God if I don't love those people too. And so what drives everything that we do isn't just thinking everybody's unique and yeah. What really drives a lot of this is being able to help people find the life that they were meant to have. Your life is a gift. And one of the challenges with mental health is people are losing out on finding the significance, the satisfaction of a life well lived. So that's really what's pushing me. I think that's what pushes everyone. I say, like when with a guy like Vince and all the rest of the folks that are on my staff, I'm always looking for two different characteristics. I'm looking for competence. Nice thing is I don't have to hire anybody that I don't think isn't a fantastic therapist, right? That I don't think has great qualifications. But the second thing is, right, you can be really competent, but if you are not compassionate, if you don't have something in you that allows you to see the spark of life and the value and the inherent intrinsic goodness that God has built into a life and what their life can accomplish, I don't want you working here. You've got to have that in your heart. That's got to be something that drives you. So I don't know, maybe I'm going too far on this.
You see that passion? Well, that passion correlates. It 100% correlates to an unwillingness to accept bad outcomes as the final result. And that's really what that comes down to, is that when you slap a label on something, it is easier to accept forever, right? And when I say a label, sometimes, not sometimes, right now, I'm referring to diagnostics. A lot of times it's like, if I can label this as that, you can accept what it is. Because most people, all walks of life, will say it's hard to accept the unknown. Right. But if we can say we know what this is and define it by a label, we can slap a label on it and we can accept it for the rest of our lives. And I think that's why we see so many people that have tried, traditional approaches and found themselves losing that hope. Right.
Yeah.
Hope
Right. Absolutely. Yep.
That's crucial.
Yep.
That's beautiful. And I want to end on this. Right. So we mentioned paradigm shift earlier. I just want to end on, I guess, the reasoning behind why we're doing this, right? There was a paradigm shift when medications were experimented on, found to be effective. They're more mass produced. It was a really good thing for society because we could help things that otherwise we weren't helping.
That's right.
Right? In the same way, talk-based therapy, the care of the soul, that was a huge paradigm shift in the way that we looked at people. Not saying you're making this up. No, we're saying, you may have problems, trauma, all these things. And that's important for you to be able to talk through. There's a lot of ways in which you could go about that. Right. So the second paradigm in the mental health world, we say, is therapy, right? We move to say this is neuromodulation, AKA the care of the processes and the way the brain functions
Mhm.
is that third paradigm. And I think, I mean, from our conversations, I think the field's going to explode with these kinds of things in the coming years. And part of our, our hope for this podcast is to inform people, to say, hey, it's out there now, but as it comes out, like, here's what to look out for. Here's a bunch of different things. But I just wanted to end on this. What makes you so firmly believe that this is a paradigm shift? It's not just an extra, it's not just a little piece of technology that a therapist should hold in their office for 1 in 10 clients or 1 in 5 clients. Like, how is this so widespread and effective for so many different people?
Yeah. And I have an entire chapter on this in the book that I wrote. There's a book that I wrote called Launching Your Career in Neurofeedback.
Check it out, guys.
Check it out. Should be good. But the entire, section that talks about this. The reality is I see us in this current time at a tipping point, right? There's this deep realization that the existing systems are not doing as promised, right? They're not going the distance. And like I said, I'm not going to come into this and criticize and just be one of those whiners that says, oh, this doesn't work. I don't like that. I shouldn't give so much No. I feel like the only person that has the right to criticize is the person that offers a solution. Right. And so I think that the reason we're at a tipping point is we're seeing problems and cracks in the foundation and where things aren't fully able to address the full range of mental health issues. People are increasingly realizing it. They're seeing it. They're frustrated. And then boom, now we have all of this new technology that is emerging that just plain makes sense. So this is a paradigm shift because we're not just stuck with 2 different modalities. We're not just stuck with diagnostic categories. We're now being able to think outside the box. We're creating conceptual lenses that allow us to see things in a way that actually makes sense. So who wants to watch this kind of a program? I would tell you people that are a little bit tired of doing the old stuff that doesn't work and expecting different results. I think it's going to be people who are totally confused by their diagnostic categories. I mean, we meet people all the time that collect diagnoses like Magic the Gathering or Pokemon cards. I'm like, hey man, I've got a generalized anxiety disorder, NOS. I'd like to trade you for like a substance abuse and addiction alcohol one. And maybe even I'll get, yeah.
Yeah. No, my borderline is worth all of those. But no, it's interesting because I feel like in order to create a paradigm shift, and that's what we're talking about here, there has to be a effectiveness on a broad level, right? And so what we're dealing with here in learning to speak brain, the brain speaks to a lot of the things that people struggle with. So when we go down that avenue, we have the ability to affect almost any population. That's a paradigm shift.
Yeah. So there's a whole range. I mean, and again, the choice of our title, Dysregulated, really was very intentional, right? Not only are we talking about electrical processes in the brain, that'll come out in the next episode that we do. Not only are we talking about that, but I would also tell you dysregulated implies an imbalance. Something is off. Something's not working right. Guess what? I would say that refers a lot to our mental health care system. And I think it's more than past time that we offer new solutions, we think differently, and we actually do things that recover the value, the purpose, and the meaning in people's lives, right? The core values that I build into people in the Neurovation Center are hope, healing, and wholeness. I go, number one, I want you to walk into my office and get the sense, not just that it's well-wishing. I hope you feel better today. We always hated that, right? I want hope with teeth. I want hope that says, holy cow, I have just had my mind blown. There's an actual, real possibility of getting better because this now makes sense. And then we want to do healing, which actually means we're going to apply the right treatment to the right problems to get an outcome, actual improvement, right? No more of this coping, no more of this covering it over. Let's actually work towards seeing improvement on this. And then in the end, wholeness to me kind of goes back to, I can find the life I always wanted to live. I love the concept, the Jewish concept of shalom. It means that all of life is at peace. It's the way it should be, that I'm settled in the way that I want to be. My life is at peace. I want people to experience that.
Yeah.
And that's what it's all about. This is the kind of paradigm shift we're looking for. So I hope people are ready to go for the ride.
Amazing. Well, with that, I think that's a great place to wrap up episode 1 here. Don't forget to tune in next week or every 2 weeks. We're still kind of determining what the exact release schedule is going to be. But keep your eye out for the next episode where we talk about
Dysregulated.
Woo! Well, you guys, it would be very, very helpful to us if you're able to like, comment, share, subscribe to our YouTube, follow us on Facebook, do all of the things that all the podcasts out there ask you to do. That would be very helpful because that helps us to reach more people if you like what we do. So thank you very much, and y'all have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you next time.